My name's Darren. I'm from Cornwall, and I don't know if this counts as a scary story in the traditional sense, but it scared me, so maybe it'll scare you too. So basically, a few years ago I found out that an old schoolmate of mine had become the youngest ever person in the UK to be convicted of being a terrorist. The police raided his mum and dad's house back in 2019 and nicknamed him after they found instructions on how to make bombs. He went to court over it, but managed to dodge prison time because of how young he was when he downloaded the instructions. The local paper said that he was a neo-Nazi, and I'm not disputing that because apparently the old Bill found all sorts of Hitler stuff when they raided his bedroom. But when I looked into it myself, there was way more to it than that. When I first heard about it, I read every single article about it that I could get my hands on. I used to be dead pally with the guy back in year 7 and year 8 and seemed like an alright kid back then. But then apparently after I moved schools at the start of year 9, he took a drastic turn for the worse. The whole thing hit really close to home, so you can imagine I wanted to know as much about it as I possibly could, mainly because I wanted to know what had gone so wrong in the guy's life that he thought about making bombs. And that's how I discovered, while reading one online article, that my old pal had been visiting the website of a group known as O9A. And the article kind of glossed over any details on the group and stated that they were neo-Nazis and just moved on. But like I said, there was a lot more to it than that. Having read a lot about various UK neo-Nazi groups while researching my old pal's arrest, the name O9A jumped out at me immediately because I've never heard of it before. I read all about the National Front, National Action, and the likes of Combat 18, but never anything about a group called O9A. So out of sheer curiosity, I decided to do some research on them to see what my old pal had gotten himself into. Then from the moment I plugged the name into Google, I think my jaw stayed on the floor for the whole time. O9A stands for the Order of the Nine Angles, and that's angles, not angels. And to put it in the simplest terms possible, they're Nazi Satanists. They want to tear down society which they think is controlled by Jews and build a new one based on paganism and a sort of survival of the fittest mentality. One of their big beliefs is human sacrifice, which they think will speed up the downfall of civilization. But they're not all talk when it comes to actually inflicting suffering and things like that, as I found out for myself when I looked them up. In the summer of 1997, 2 Swedish members of the O9A committed the Keelers Park murder, which was where those 2 blokes tried to ritually sacrifice an Algerian man. Then in 2019, an American soldier was found out to be a member of the Order of the Nine Angles and was planning on kidnapping and killing his fellow soldiers in the name of Satan. I know you're probably thinking, okay, I was with you till you tried making out that there's satanic terrorists in the US Army, but please, if you think I'm trying to mess with you, then look it up. The fella's name is Ethan Melzer, and there's a bloody New York Times article about the whole thing. And this is legit, not just some stupid creepypasta. The year after that, another soldier was found to be a member of O9A, only this was a member of a group within the O9A called, and you might want to spell this out instead of saying it so you don't get in trouble, the RAPE Waffen. The group of scumbags hatched the idea of violating white girls and getting them pregnant from it so that more white babies would be born. Like I said, my jaw is resting firmly on the floor by this point as I was reading stuff like that, and because it legitimately sounds like badly written blue hair fan fiction, I had to stop and look all this up as I was reading it, only to find out that, yeah, it was all true. Another one that sounded too insane to be true was the story about another member of the Order of Nine Angles, whose name I've got handy, but I don't know that you want to edit it out, but he's named Luke Austin Lane. He and his 2 mates were caught planning the murder of some Antifa couple. And yeah, I'm no fan of Antifa, but this bloke was actually planning on killing this couple's kids in front of them before finishing them off in turn. They're kids, man. What kind of scumbag deliberately executes innocent kids like that? And I just couldn't believe what I was reading, but it kept going. To prepare for the murders, Luke Lane and his mates killed a sheep, drank its blood, and then took a lot of LSD or mushrooms or something to go on a sort of spiritual journey. I read another thing about a bloke in Canada who killed a Muslim guy, and then I think he stabbed some Sikh fella, and then when he was caught, boom, police found out that he was a member of O9A. And there are loads more satanic murders like that, mainly in Scandinavia and Eastern Europe, and they're all connected to what is literally a satanic terrorist group. But to be honest, that's not even half of it, because if you look up all the stuff that the Order's members are involved in, you start seeing this same sick pattern playing out over and over again. Excluding 2018, every single year for the past 7 years, a member of the Order of the Nine Angles had been arrested and convicted of being a child abuser, be that through having material on their hard drives or actually doing disgusting things themselves. Most of these incidents have been in the UK, but as of 2021, they've spread to America and Sweden too. But then, as much as you might think that these dudes are just straight up creeps, and hear me out about this one, I don't think that's necessarily the case. The Order of the Nine Angles has these 2 documents about human sacrifices. One's called A Gift for the Prince, and the other is called Calling, A Guide to Sacrifice. Most of their literature is absolute garbage. Like, it's legitimately difficult because of how much jargon and inside language they use, but there's one bit that really stood out to me. Something that makes me think that all the CSEM stuff is basically part of their ethos. The Order says that human sacrifice isn't just confined to killing people. If they were burning and decapitating people every week, they'd all be caught in no time, right? Well, to continually propagate human suffering without overly alerting the authorities, the Order distributes CSEM as a way of sort of feeding evil, if that makes sense. It sounded wild to me at first, too. I can promise you, but the more I read and the more I thought about it, the more it all started to make this sort of horrible kind of sense to me. The kids involved in this, it's them that are being sacrificed, and by distributing the images of them being abused, the Order of the Nine Angles is able to sacrifice them over and over again while corrupting other people in the process. Again, I know this sounds too insane to be true, but here's yet another example of it happening back in 2020. In April of that year, Russian police raided the homes of a group suspected of, and this is a direct quote from the Russian website now, incitement to murder due to religious and racial hatred and criminal activities against women. I think they thought that these dudes were just neo-Nazis, but during the raids, they found the men were members of a Russian-based chapter of the O9A called Legion Av Satan. Turns out one of these lads had burned down a really old church someplace, and it was never solved until they found photos of him setting it on fire in his house. But that wasn't the worst part of it. As I was reading about this group, I remember thinking, okay, well, at least these lads weren't pedos, but then lower down the article from the Russian website, I saw that they were. They'd been grooming kids in this place, Krasnodar, where they lived, and were trying to get them into underage prostitution. And I imagined that they were going to profit in some way from it. But that's not the point with these Order of the Nine Angles people. It's about suffering. It's about the suffering of innocent people. And that's what they trade in. It's because human suffering makes Satan more powerful, so they say. It has to be a specific kind of human suffering, though. The kind that doesn't improve a person. Things like grief, severe physical pain, or the lifelong mental scarring that comes with being abused at a really young age. And I'm sure you'll agree. The Order of the Nine Angles rabbit hole makes for some of the worst stuff you've ever heard, and by the time I'd finished reading about it, I was in 2 minds about my old mate not getting any jail time. He was 14 when he got into that order, 16 when he was arrested, so yeah, I can put that down to something a stupid teenage boy would do. But the Order is no joke, and the fact that he had some of their human sacrifice documents downloaded on his computer was very worrying. I'm not saying that we should lock everyone up who does or says something silly on the internet, but reading through all the O9A stuff makes me wonder if a mistake hasn't been made. And I hope my old mate turns a new leaf, and it was all just a silly phase to him. I mean, he's definitely sorry that he got caught, because I know for a fact that he's got all kinds of restrictions placed on him. And don't ask me how I know. Everyone knows everyone in Cornwall, but I know he can't go on certain websites or talk to certain people, and if he does, he's in serious trouble. That'd definitely have me thinking I'd made a mistake here, and I really do hope that he sees it that way, because honestly, the alternative is bloody well terrifying, isn't it? If he cracks on with life and it becomes something daft that he did back when he was a lad, then good on him. But if not, well, I imagine I'll be reading about him at some point in the future, for whatever terrible thing that he does, in the name of the devil.